Hi, I'm Diane Blinn, social worker at the high school.
Hi, I'm Amy Stannard. I'm the school counselor at Pinewood Intermediate School.
Hi, I'm Brenda Reelman. I am the school counselor at Brock Primary.
Hi, I'm Paula Cummings. I am the social worker at Draper Middle School.
On behalf of the Counseling and Social Work Department, we want to welcome you back. During this unprecedented time of school reopening, we appreciate this opportunity to talk with all of you about the importance of welcoming back our students into the building and focusing on building positive relationships and social emotional learning.
Our district-wide focus will continue to be on making positive connections with students throughout their day, both in person and virtually. Think about all of the great ways student connections happen already. The impact you have all had on our students, both as learners and people, is apparent in the overwhelming number of students who want to return to in-person learning in our buildings. Students miss you and they cannot wait to come back.
The face of teaching has really changed. We see you, we hear you, and we care about you. With that said, we are here today reaching out to you because for many of our students, home is not always a safe haven. With the pandemic and the need to socially isolate and families experiencing different and more profound stressors, it is more important than ever to focus on our connection with our students.
As a follow-up to the Julie Bailey presentation, we would like to show you a brief video about the importance of those connections can have on a student. We are reinforcing that relationship building is evidence-based practice, and it is at the foundation of everything that we do. Teaching cannot happen without connection and relationship. We're going to share a video by Dr. Allison Jackson.
So silence gives consent. And today what I'm hoping is we can break some silence, even when it's uncomfortable, because I think we want to do important things. What I want you to reflect on is if you or someone you know has experienced one of the following 10 events prior to the age of being 18: emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, feeling unloved or unwanted by your family, being afraid your basic needs might not get met, a divorce or separation of your caregivers, witnessing domestic violence in your home, someone with a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue in your home, someone in your home incarcerated, all prior to the age of 18. I've just defined adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, otherwise known as childhood emotional trauma. And it's a health risk that increases social problems in our community, raises our risk for disease, and can even shorten our lifespan. The Center of Disease Control names it as the prime determinant of health. And yet, unlike texting while driving or smoking cigarettes when we're young, for most of us, it's still an unknown epidemic. And yet 70% of the general population has had at least one of those events happen. That's 1,050 people in this room and about 7 people in your row. 1 out of 6 of us has had 4 or more of those events happen. And that's 240 people in this room and probably 1 or 2 people in your row. And yet we're not talking about it. Even though when it goes above a 4, some pretty hard statistics come about. At a 4, we're over 1,500% more likely to attempt suicide, over 550% more likely to become an alcoholic, COPD, liver disease, asthma. At a 6, we're more likely to die 20 years younger than our counterpart, at age 60 instead of age 80. And so we need to embrace what this silence costs us. I want to introduce you to Henry. At 18 months old, Henry moves into your community, and neighbors go to knock on his door, but they hear loud screaming and noise inside, and they look at each other and say, you know, we do Crime Hood Watch and checking building maintenance, but I don't know if we're in for this. And so they walk away. At 2.5 years old, he goes to daycare. And they notice mom has a bruise on her eye, and Henry's kind of aggressive in class. And they go, director, should we do something about this? No, she says, we're in charge of good quality childcare, not this. And so things go on. At 5 years old, he's put upstairs in his room, and he hears a loud crash downstairs. And he comes downstairs, and mommy's bleeding on the kitchen floor, and dad's standing above her. 4 big police officers burst down the door. They grab dad and put him in the police car, grab mom, put her in the ambulance, grab Henry and lock him in the car. A woman comes and taps on his window. She has his things in a garbage bag and says, come on, let's go. He drives to a new neighborhood where he knows no one, falls asleep in a bed, not in his pajamas, crying himself to sleep. He wakes up in the morning going to a new school that he doesn't know, and the teacher yells at him because he has a hard time following the rules. And he says, wow, that sounds like Dad, and I don't even know where Dad is. And next, he moves from school to school, and his foster care parents get angry at him, and they start yelling at him and begins wetting his bed at night until a new social worker comes and says, come on, put your things back in the garbage bag. We got to move again. And he wonders how many places he's going to have to live, where his parents are, and if he'll see them again. His behavioral health file gets this thick, and so does his school file, until one day they tell him his parents aren't his parents anymore, termination of parental rights. And so now he's up for adoption, but nobody really wants him. And so he's in his 10th foster care placement at 11 years old, and foster dad and foster mom are fighting, and he thinks, I'm never going to watch someone put their hands on someone else again. And he steps in and he takes a swing, and the next thing he knows, he's in handcuffs in juvenile detention. Now that's a tough story to hear. And what I want you to think about is 12 systems and 50+ people crossed Henry and his family's life, and yet no one thought it was their job to connect with them about that hard story. And that doesn't make sense to me because, right, we're caring people. All of us are. And so I wonder, maybe it's because we were taught it's not our role, it's not our place. Or maybe from a more hidden part of ourselves, we think that's Henry, that's his family. We can't change stuff like that. That's them and this is us. What I want you to hear today is this is not an us-them conversation. This is an all-of-us conversation. And if we choose to keep our story of silence, this epidemic's gonna grow. And that feels uncomfortable, right? And if I'm doing this right, you feel uncomfortable because when we get uncomfortable, we grow, and that's a good thing. And you might be saying, Allison, what do you want me to do about this? I mean, I don't know how to break this silence. I might not have the right letters behind my name. I might not have any letters behind my name. I mean, violence and abuse, that seems like pretty big stuff. And what I would say to you is this: 70% of why anyone changes a negative health behavior is because of the person who connects with them and inspires them to change that. Relationship is the evidence-based practice, connection, and you don't need the right letters or any letters to do that. So I want to tell you about Kat. Kat had 8 of those 10 things happen before she was 19 years old. She went from residential placement about between the ages of 13 and 19, about 8 to 10. And she was the kid that broke windows and tore down doors. Sometimes she was held down in restraints and injected with Thorazine. She tells the story of a nurse who one time said, you know what, Kat, act your age, not your shoe size. I own this place. You got to come through me to get out of here. And that's who Kat would have thought she was until she met Howard, a mental health tech who had no letters behind his name, but he understood connection, and he was willing to go past his role. And he said, you know what, Kat, I get we need to connect, and he had to find her motivation. So he took her to the gym and said, you know what, I want you to exercise, and if you give me 1 solid hour of really good exercise, I'll let you go back to the unit and tear everything up. And she said, hell yeah, right? The joke was, though, that when she walked out of that gym, she was crawling and she couldn't lift a chair to throw, okay? And that was Howard's plan, although she didn't know that. And so Howard looked at her and he said, she began telling these chapters of her story. And he said, you know what, Kat, I see something in you. You're gonna do something important in your life. Well, Kat had never heard that before, and so she liked that. So she did what Howard didn't plan and got locked up a lot to see him. That wasn't the intention. And so she came there one day, and he said, Kat, you coming here to see me? And she said, yeah. And he said, here's my schedule. Meet me in the lobby, right? We don't need to do that. So she did. That's how she got through high school. The thing is that hard stuff doesn't stop happening at 18. Kat went away to college. She was raped. She went through a serious suicide attempt, and she came back to the adult psychiatric institution, the same place where she was as a kid. Howard found out she was being admitted, and at 2 a.m, he came to her admission and said, Kat, please don't give up before you know what you can become. I'm gonna hold hope right here till you're strong enough to grab it. Right here. That was the last time Kat attempted suicide, the last time she was locked in a residential placement, and the first job she ever had was a psych tech on a unit like Howard's because she promised to pay that connection forward. Now, we're sitting here with 2 stories, and that's the intention. For centuries, stories have taught us how to make meaning. Dr. Brené Brown teaches us that we are hardwired for connection, and that one of our deepest fears is disconnection, that fear of not belonging. And so we're sitting with the story of disconnection and connection, and that gives us a choice. We can think about Henry before he threw that punch, the 12 systems that crossed his path, the 50-plus people that chose not to connect, and we can think maybe if somebody had connected earlier, that story could have been different. And we can think about Kat, because Kat might not be who you think, because Kat's story is my story. My nickname throughout school was Alley Cat. And if Howard had not made a decision to connect with a kid like me, I truly believe I would have been in an institution, dead, or probably in jail. And so we're not powerful enough to know who's had trauma and who hasn't. We're not powerful enough to know who makes it and who doesn't. But we're powerful enough to do two things. One, teach someone else about childhood trauma as a health issue. And two, make that risk of connection. I think about if somebody came up to me and said, you know, Allison, I saw this awesome doctor on Friday talk about childhood trauma, and they told me that I should tell someone about it. And I'm wondering if you would listen. I think I would have listened, and I think it would have made a difference. Mavis Lino once said, if you want to make a difference in the world, the next time you see someone being cruel to another human being, take it personal, because it is. And what I would add to that powerful statement is the next time someone gives you the honor of walking their trauma, their pain story in front of you, answer that call with connection. Because you see, ordinary acts of courage can change this. It's not going to be the monumental events. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
That was a very powerful video. We know that students show us their experiences through behaviors, sometimes very challenging behaviors. Think about a student you may have had. Perhaps they did not attend to a task, they might not have followed directions, or even became oppositional. Through connection and creating a bond with that student, you learned something important about that student's story that probably shifted how you saw and related to that student going forward.
Students' behaviors are an expression of their ACEs, their traumas, their neglect. When thinking about Maslow's hierarchy, our students' basic needs, physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, all have to be met before they can truly become active learners. When thinking about our students, do they have enough food, or are they experiencing food insecurities? Do they all feel safe at home? Do they all feel loved at home?
Now think about your classroom. Do all students have a feeling of love and belonging in your classroom? Does each student feel that they belong to a group? Do students have strong relationships with their peers and adults? In terms of their esteem, do all students feel good about themselves? Are we giving powerful verbal feedback to support their self-esteem? Do they think their peers think positively about them?
It would be fair to say that if students were experiencing these struggles before the pandemic, they have probably been exacerbated since. What we also know is that students who were not experiencing these stressors before might be now due to job loss, losses in their families, increased instances of drug and alcohol abuse, and countless increased mental health needs. We might not have the power to change things at home, but once a student enters our classroom, we have the power to help them by connecting and creating a relationship. Building relationship is evidence-based practice.
You just heard that making connections and building relationships is important to our students' learning and social emotional health. One thing is for sure, all of you are awesome teachers that do awesome things in the classroom every day. This is not the time to reinvent the wheel. This is the time to tap into what you're already doing and what you already know, the things that you are all experts at, building positive relationships.
Think about all the amazing things you have always been doing to connect with students. This is social emotional learning. You connect with students by being present in the building when students arrive. Provide choices when greeting students. Simple check-ins, morning meetings, mindful moments, calming spaces, journal prompts. A specific example of social emotional learning could be asking them what they love about learning, what they look forward to about this school year. What are 3 amazing things that they can share about themselves? What is one thing you would like your classmates and teacher to know about you? What is one new thing you would like to make or learn this year? Please also refer to our teacher resource for more ideas to connect and how to adjust based on some of the social distancing guidelines. Please continue to reach out to your school counselor, social worker, and psychologist for support inside or outside of your classroom. We will continue to be happy to be in your classrooms working alongside you. Now let's hear from our teachers how they implement social emotional learning.
Now let's hear from some of our Mohan teachers on how they connect to their students in their classrooms.
The greatest rewards of teaching over the years have been in the relationships I've cultivated with my students and their families. And those relationships are grounded in the foundation of the type of relationship that I have with myself. As a highly sensitive person, I really needed to tend to myself with mindfulness practices as a way to stay sane. And that just means letting those mindful moments punctuate the day, right? To stop and breathe, to tend to my heart, to empty all the clutter that's clouding my mind, and to begin again in love. We're seeing more mental health issues than ever in our society. They're manifesting in our classroom. And I think we're seeing a lot of kids who are anxious, but presenting as belligerent. So I think when we have that kind relationship with ourselves, when we're able to give ourselves a break, we're much more likely to tend to our students with the same kind regard. And I think the best teaching and learning absolutely comes from a place of love and a place of right relationship.
Hi everyone, it's Michelle Evans. Welcome back. I just wanted to take a quick minute today to discuss how important social emotional learning is in our classrooms. In today's world, this is especially true because the kids are facing a greater amount of instability in their lives, and they really need to be taught the coping skills to help them get through it and be successful. One strategy I used last year was what I called my emotional planner. The idea behind it is that certain events in our lives trigger emotions, and those emotions drive our actions. So what you want to do is empower the students to make good choices with their actions. What we would do is we would start off each day talking about maybe how the day started, if they got in trouble at home, how that made them feel. And instead of acting out throughout the day, we would come up with strategies as a class to help that person make healthy choices. This worked out wonderfully throughout the school year for me last year. And probably by the second month, the kids were offering up ideas and strategies for each other. And it really made a very nice, safe space in our classroom. Okay, have a great day.
So how do you make connections when you only see people in passing? I tend to say hi to everyone who walks by. I take notice of their interests. Maybe they're carrying a basketball, so I start talking about basketball. Maybe they have a football jersey on, and I talk about their team and how they're doing. If a student looks down, I'll join them for the walk down the hallway, and I'll talk to them about something that I do, and then ask them what they've been doing. I might ask them, about an interest. What do you like? What do you really like to do? I also get to know the kids' schedules and their activities outside of school, and then I'll ask them about that the next day. So mainly I make connections by taking notice of the child and then taking an interest in whatever they might be interested in.
We took part in the Capital District Writing Project this summer for the University at Albany. One of the biggest takeaways from our work with the CDWP was learning the importance of reaching our students on a social emotional level through writing.
Writing gives students a safe space to communicate what they are thinking and feeling. We were floored by how much the writing process proved to be therapeutic for us as educators, and we cannot wait to use writing as a tool for our students to connect and reflect on their experience in this wild time.
The simple strategy of journaling or writing into your day can be huge in reaching your students on the social emotional level. A prompt such as "something you don't know about me" can lead students to open up, connect with you, and also with their emotions or feelings.
Writing in the beginning of any class helps to focus students and improve their overall well-being. We encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions on how to get started or implement a daily writing practice to help support your students' emotional health at the beginning of the year.
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Gordon. I teach at Draper Middle School. A few SEL activities that I do in my class are Feel Good Fridays. The last 15 minutes or so of class I save so that we can just share some positive energy and talk about great things that happened to us that week. Every student gets to share, and I make sure that I share something as well that happened to me personally. I also make sure that I call home for every one of my students in the first 3 weeks just to make sure that I have a really positive interaction with that family for the first time, and I always share good news about their student, whether it was a great job on an assignment or just being kind to a friend in class. And lastly, I always have a student showcase. It switches about every week or bi-weekly, where I have one student who's being showcased and all of their peers in class share something with me about what they love about that student. It could be a talent or just a character trait that they enjoy about them. And I put all of those things together on a poster with the student's picture, and they're showcased. We call them Hype Me Up posters, and that student is able to see all the awesome things that their peers have to say about them.
One of the best ways that I have found to build a relationship with students in my classroom has been to use a lot of humor. I like to goof around. I think the kids really like to goof around. I think it's important that you kind of have some laughs here and there in class, and that really helps to build a class community. It's also important to be real, be a human, tell stories. I tell them about anything crazy that happens on the weekend, or I'll tell them something funny about my family or something funny I did as a kid or things like that that make me like a real human, because I think sometimes they forget that we are real humans. So that sort of helps me to build that relationship with them. I also think that having sort of an open door policy is really important. Obviously this year that's probably going to be one of the things I miss the most, because I don't think we're going to be able to really have an open door policy with all of the COVID restrictions. But you'd be surprised how much you can learn about a student, how much they can learn about you, how much quality kind of off time you can spend with them, and what that will do for your classroom management down the road. Students sometimes think that they have sort of caught me in a tangent, and I'm off telling a story, and I'm kind of wasting time. But it's all usually very calculated up front. I know what lessons I have a little wiggle room. I know what lessons I don't have a little wiggle room in, and I know that doing that ahead of time will pay back later, and giving that little bit of wiggle room when I can will help me rein them in when I need them to be reined in.
We all bring our own personal experiences and stories to our relationships with students. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it may be what brought you to this profession and what drives your passion to be the best that you can be. It is important, however, to be aware of what we bring to an interaction, to be able to foster positive relationships and connections that are both meaningful and healing. So we encourage you to practice self-care. The district is here to support you. There are links to EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, on our district website. EAP is a confidential therapeutic resource that is free and available to all Mohonasen employees. When caring for yourself, it's important to care for all of you, mind, body, and heart.
As a mom of 2 young children, these past 6 months has been very different, to say the least. There were moments when I was not at my best, but I always tried the best that I could. I try hard every day to carve out me time, whether it's going for a run, going for a walk, baking in the kitchen, listening to music, so I could really enjoy those moments of laughter and play with my children and my family. Those moments of self-care are so important to me, as it rejuvenates myself to be the best I can be for myself, my family, and my role as your school counselor.
During these uncertain times, for me, maintaining connections with people was so important to de-stress and remain grounded. I would look forward to phone calls or FaceTimes with my friends and family. This summer, limiting the amount of outings and vacations forced me to slow down. We spent so much time as a family at our family camp on a quiet lake. We planted a garden and focused on each other. When my mind starts to wander on the what ifs and how is this all going to work, these are the things that help me to refocus so I can be the best for myself, my family, and my role as your school counselor.
So I've personally gone through a roller coaster of emotions these last 6 months. What has helped me stay grounded and fed my heart and soul is spending time with my boys and my husband, knowing they are safe, happy, and healthy. Not to imply that we haven't gone through our challenges, because we absolutely did. and there were definitely times that I lost my mind, but I continued to try my best. Reading and exercise have become paramount for my mind and body. Find your strengths in your tribe. Who can you lean on? What makes you feel good? And how do you recharge?
We hope you have a great transition back to school and a successful and rewarding school year. We will continue to work alongside you as you build positive relationships and connect with our students.